Why can I still see us?
Yes.
Yeah, I can too.
Hi, everybody. I can see we've got like 25 people online. That's exciting.
Hi everyone, I'm Annabelle from General Assembly. Welcome to today's webinar event, Advertising Week APAC Briefings, 5 Things Workers of the Future, presented by Advertising Week APAC, Lucio.ai and General Assembly. Thanks for joining us, and a big thank you to our moderator, Lucio, and our panel guests, Karl, Kelly, and Jeanette. You'll meet them all very shortly. Firstly, to introduce General Assembly, we're a global tech education company helping people upskill in technology, business, data, and design. And our mission is to employ people to pursue work they love. You can visit us online at ga.co to check out all our offerings, from classes and workshops to longer format courses and free events like this, currently all running live and online. Before we begin, I'm going to run through some housekeeping information for you. For this webinar, attendees will have no video and are muted, so don't worry if you can't see yourself. To participate in the webinar today, I'd like to point you to the menu bar down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You'll see 2 functions, the chat box and the Q&A. If you have content-related questions for the panel, please only ask those in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those as many of those as we can at the end of the session. This is so we can have all our questions in one place and don't miss any. If you have any troubleshooting issues, GA-related inquiries, or any general comments you'd like to make, please pop these in the chat box and our team will follow up with you if necessary. A recording of the session will be emailed to you in the next week. Lastly, it'd be great if everyone could take a couple of minutes after the event to fill out a feedback form, which I'll link in the chat box at the end. I'll now pass on to Lucio to kick off. Thank you everyone and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Annabelle. I was muted. I should know better by now. That's my 5th run. I'm still going mute. So welcome to Advertising Week Briefings, 5 Things. This is our series of monthly educational events where I interview industry experts on 5 things worth knowing about their industry. Last month we had retail, and this month we're going to talk about the future of work, or workers of the future. I have just launched a poll here. It would be really amazing if you could just have a quick click there, letting us know your background, all right? Just a quick click there. We're gonna leave this for a few seconds, and then we're gonna check it out, the results. But tonight we talk about the workers of the future, okay? Before I start this, I need to say my thank you to all the people who made this event possible. I'd like to say thank you to Natalia, Nat, Emily, James, and Henry, who are volunteers that helped me to get this event together. Ingrid, Annabelle, and the team at General Assembly, and of course, the team from Advertising Week, JPEG, Gaudi, and Clive. I'm your host, Lucio Ribeiro, and I'm a marketing consultant and founder of Lucio.ai, a business that helps senior marketers with their digital needs. I'm also a lecturer on artificial intelligence and digital marketing at RMIT, and marketing sites at Deakin. Enough about me. Done. Let's talk about my guests. All right. So I have the poll here. We have a little bit mix of everything. We feel like a united nation tonight. We have students, freelancers, startups. We have a little bit of for everyone. So yeah, thank you very much, Annabelle, for running the poll. So welcome, Kelly. Welcome, Jeanette. And welcome, Karl. It's a pleasure having you here with me. Before kick things off, how about give a little bit of background and what you're currently up to? So how about start with you, Kelly, and you can unmute your mic and just tell a little bit of background.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. My name is Kelly Fawcett. I am the Research and Policy Manager at the Foundation for Young Australians. We are a national for-purpose organisation that's all about backing and supporting young people. And one of the ways that we do that is through research into the future of work and what that means for young people's career trajectories. So thinking about the future of work is essentially my day job.
Thanks, Kelly. How about your background, Jeanette?
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all here, and thanks for taking time out of your, is it Thursday evening to join us? My name is Jeanette Cheah. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hacker Exchange. What Hacker Exchange does is we help to bridge that gap between the exponential changes in tech and industry and the fairly linear, or shall we say, flat rate of change in traditional higher education. So we usually run programs for startups and students running to Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv, Singapore, Melbourne, etc. These days we obviously run them virtually, but before working at Hacker Exchange, my background is about 14 years in corporate Australia, so working in marketing, product and innovation in some of the big corporates around the city. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Karl.
Hi, Lucio. Thank you. Hi, Jeanette and Kelly. And thanks for the opportunity, Lucio and General Assembly, to join you tonight. I hope you're all safe and well. So my name's Karl Winther. I'm founder and lead consultant at Winther Consulting. So a marketing consulting freelancer, specializing in strategy, execution and optimization of marketing, working with SMEs, some advertising agencies, particularly around client acquisition, but also corporates. I'm currently with Bunnings on a short-term contract. And just a bit of background about how I got to being where I am today. I've had senior marketing roles at Myer, looking after things like marketing operations. Then was the GM of marketing at Officeworks for 7 years, overseeing all aspects of marketing. Had a brief foray into being Chief Marketing Officer at Australia Post, and we can go more into detail of that, but I resigned from there and I'm currently a marketing consultant.
Wow, what a panel, right? I've got a bit of everything here, so I'm really excited and thank you very much for joining us. So when I was doing some research for today's webinars, of course, I'm no expert there, I found out this really interesting thing, all right? So Leonardo da Vinci, the famous painter and inventor, he wrote resumes. And before even being famous, before he painted Mona Lisa and The Last Supper, before he invented the helicopter, before he drew the most famous image of the man, before all these things, Leonardo da Vinci was a maker, all right? And like all of us, he had to put together a resume to get his next gig. And an interesting fact, in 1482, when he was aged 30 years old, he wrote a letter and a resume and sent it off to the Duke of Milan. And then he got a gig and he painted The Last Supper from there. So 500 years later, and we are still doing the same. We're still writing resumes. So Kelly, I'd like to kick off with you, start with you. What is the current, before we talk about the future of the work, what is the current reality of work?
Well, it would be remiss of me not to mention the current COVID situation that we're all living in. I think previously I might have said that although change is a constant, the rapid pace of change that we're currently experiencing today is unlike anything any previous generation has ever experienced, due in large part to technological shifts. But I think the reality that we find ourselves in is that a lot of people are out of work today, particularly young people and women who have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID crisis. And, you know, already prior to this, young people were experiencing rates of underemployment much higher than the general population. And today we're looking at that sitting at about 1 in 2 young people might be or underemployed as a result of the current crisis. So I think it's twofold. One, if you're lucky enough to be in work looks completely different today than it did 3 months ago. You know, welcome to my living room. I think this is what we're all currently experiencing at the moment, and there's no boundaries in work at the moment. And for those of us who are not lucky enough to be in the workforce at the moment, that's something that's likely to stick around for quite a while, particularly for young people. Not to go all doom and gloom, I will bring it back to a little bit of optimism before the end of the day.
Well, but just considering we just described now, Kelly, like we talk about future of work, can we even predict it?
I don't think any of us can claim to have a crystal ball. I know there's a lot of people that make their living off being a futurist. But what we can say is that change will be a constant. In fact, we expect a young person today to have about 18 jobs over 6 different careers in their lifetime. And what that really means for young people is that building up a portfolio of skills across a range of different domains is really important.
Jeanette, join us here. We're talking about, Kelly's talking about the future of the current reality of the work, the future of the work, and she talked a lot about the young people, which is really impressive, challenging. How about women? Is the future of work different for women at work?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. And jumping off Kelly's point around the current pandemic, I think we know, stats from the Australian Workplace Gender Agency say that women make up about 70% of the workforce when it comes to caring and social services and health. So we do know that there is a disproportionate impact of the current pandemic on the female population in every country, really, because the burdens of taking care of doing caring, both at work and at home, increase. There's overrepresentation also of the female population in things like hospitality and travel. So Kelly, I mean, you probably have the stats at your fingertips, but honestly, I think the future of work for women, look, it could be quite interesting. I mean, we have a situation now where there are very few boundaries between the workplace and the home life. Whether or not this is something that as a workforce we decide is a good thing or not, who knows? What I do know is that we've seen a lot more people who might have otherwise been quite buttoned up and been wearing their cufflinks and being very tough, having to deal with their cat walking across the screen and the butthole in the camera and their children behind them. And I think that humanization of people that would have been otherwise quite senior or, maybe more traditional roles of leadership, maybe a lot of male roles. I think that humanization might help to equalize what the future of work looks like, which perhaps might open the door for additional, gender equality in the workplace. So that's something that I'm quite excited to see, how society addresses that going forward.
Yeah, I want to go to Karl and ask something to him, but before we close the webinar today, I'd like you to think about it, like one simple thing that, for example, myself, mid-age, white, the typical, work, I would say, male, what can I do that's on my bias that I'm not even aware of for young people, for women? So if you can think about this before we end today, it's just a practical thing I can do on a daily basis. I'm maybe blind, not necessarily badly trying to do, but it's just blind to there. Maybe we come back to this because I want to.
We can definitely talk about that later.
Oh yeah, please. I just want to get you out of surprise. I want you to give your best shot on there, and I'm genuinely interested on there. But Karl, bringing you to this conversation, Kelly covered the younger, Jeanette talked about women. How about senior people? When you are a senior and need to adapt to the new reality, what is the process? And I would like to think about the diversity, but also the mentality that goes around there.
Yeah, I think that's your polite way of saying I'm old. So yeah, from a senior person, look, I have to admit that I don't come to this conversation as a work expert, and I'm happy to admit that I was actually potentially, I'm always happy to give an opinion, but I was reluctant to potentially participate in this project. But Lucio, in talking with him, he wanted me to share some of my experiences, honestly share, what I've been through and some of my thoughts. And that's all I can do with you. I don't have them as expert opinions, but they are opinions. And hopefully some of my learnings can be valuable to you all. My scenario is, I feel like I've been living the scenario that some people are currently living today, 16 months ago. So I'm actually in the future, believe it or not. I had a scenario where I had quite a successful career, still hopefully a successful career, but I'm going to happily admit that I'm not doing what I want to do. I would like, you know, to be a chief marketing officer, a GM of marketing like I was in my last couple of roles. And I was in a scenario where I went to a role, it wasn't exactly right for me from a cultural point of view, wasn't the scope that I was promised, and it was better to resign and move on, cut my losses, because sometimes just things don't work out in life. And so that was 16 months ago. So I'm just going to answer your questions, Lucio, about, you know, what can senior people do. I'm going to just share some, you know, I've been through the roller coaster. I'm going to share 5, I think. Yeah, I think I've got about 5 just key points, and they're from my own learning. So the first thing is own your situation. There's no shame in your situation, whatever it is. The shame is only in your head. Okay. No one, let's just be honest about it. No, everyone cares about themselves. And if you spend all your time worrying about what other people think, you're actually not getting on with life. And I think it's a bit of a blocker. So own your situation, embrace it. Most people don't care. So once you sort of do that and really own it, really understand your value would be number 2. Really understand what you're passionate about, what you're good at. Everyone is good at something. And I'd really say, as a senior person, if you're going through this, really understand when life was at your best, from a work point of view. When were you doing what you love? And be really clear about what you want then from both now and from the future. And I'm going to bring, hopefully you've heard of a term, if you're one of these people experiencing this, you can embark on a portfolio career. That's something that could be the future of work in terms of embracing different career options. At the moment, I'm doing a short-term contract with Bunnings. Who knows what the future may hold, but it's a portfolio career as opposed to just having one job for a number of years. I think if you're not sure about what you're good at, talk to others. And I think ask for help would be number 3. Go and talk to people and ask for help in terms of people you work with or people that you know, and be really authentic. I think what I've found is most people want to help. If you go to them and say, I need your help, they will want to help in some way, shape or form, but be really clear and specific. I think where it can be a downfall is actually saying, oh, can I pick your brain? No. I'm really interested in getting involved in FMCG, and I'm not sure if my experience is relevant for that. What could I do to beef up my experience to make me relevant for FMCG? That's being really specific in terms of asking people for help. And by doing that, you really got to, the 4th thing would be network. Network. And networking with people is not about how can they help you. Networking with people is how can you help them. Go with that mindset. And sometimes it's about networking with your network, or thinking about your network and how you can actually bring them together and create these meetings where people can actually help each other out, and you're being the conduit. And you know, it's a really positive feeling. But I think what you get from that is a lot of value, and you get people thinking about you for top of mind when those roles or those opportunities may come up in the future. And I think then the 5th thing would be about, it's hard. It's really hard to go through this emotionally. So don't think it's easy, but you've got to maintain a persistency, being persistent, and resilience, a resilient mindset. And I think the biggest thing that's got me through this whole process and keeping persistent, resilient, is focusing on what you do have, not focusing on what you don't have, and focusing on what you could have in the future. And what you know, in your mind's eye, picturing what will really make you happy, but being open to new opportunities that come your way. So that's my 5 sort of tips around what a senior person can do. Own your situation, really understand your value and be clear about it. And that can evolve as things change. Don't be ashamed to ask for help, but be specific. Network, and just maintain that persistence and resilience.
Yeah, it's a really good point. They gentle, I can't remember someone taught me this long ago. Persistent, gentle persistence. Like when you're on these situations, you have a lot of assumptions. Like if someone hasn't replied your email, you say, oh, that person doesn't care about me, and all this sort of stuff. Like we're all busy, right? And sometimes the thing just slips through and we just moving on. So Someone talked to me about this gentle persistency. which is really important. And I've seen this, lots of my friends just dropping from one email and just assuming not going ahead with that. So Jeanette, I saw you doing yes, no. Do you want to say anything on top of what Karl just described?
Feel free to disagree.
No, I think that there'll be quite a lot of agreement, but I mean, I think the idea of, you know, what can people who are more in senior roles do to prepare themselves for the future of work. I remember being at ANZ working in the innovation team, and there was an incredible general manager who got up and she said, you know what, if I can't pick you up of your job and drop you into a startup and you can start adding value to that business tomorrow, then I don't know what you're doing in your job. Right. And I think that was a really interesting way of getting people that currently work in a corporate environment to reflect on the value that they're bringing to the job every day. It's not about being a PowerPoint jockey. It's not about going to lots of meetings. It's about, can you help to take a business from 0 to 1 or 1 to 2, and to really kind of think about, you know, your ability to take your skills, your network, your hustle, your resilience, and bring that to a startup. If you take that particular perspective, I think that's a really interesting way for people who are in senior positions to reflect on their value for future of work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because that's what I've been on a journey of, and things that I've always done in my roles, I'm now doing that with a couple of startups, and also doing it with Bunnings, who I've got a contract with at the moment, and realizing they actually get value out of it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and the other thing that if I had to go back to my previous self, I'd understand a bit more about my value and concentrate on, you know, not just your weaknesses, but your strengths. But I'd also say that networking thing, in terms of build your networks of people that you are there and can help. And it's not networking for the sake of networking, it's networking for the genuine human ability to actually help people with that bit of advice or that bit of guidance that, you know, they didn't know they need it until they got it.
Yeah, be at service before asking this service, right? So Jeanette, how about young people? What's going on right now with young workforce? What kind of problems they're facing right now?
Sure. I mean, you know, this part of what I just said before is part of the reason why we take an entrepreneurship and startup perspective to education right now. And I mean, Lucio, you're a lecturer, you work with young people every day. Obviously, Kelly does also. And I think what I'm seeing from a lot of the students that we work with, and I saw there was 30% students on this call, is that they're feeling a little disenfranchised. This is not the education they signed up for. This is not the future that they were hoping for. And I feel like a lot of young people are feeling like the world is dumping a big load onto their laps, and they're having to deal with that. So I guess, you know, what we're seeing is a combination of, you know, a bit of listlessness. People are a bit like, what do I do now? So they're looking for some guidance. There's definitely a group of people that are like really pumped, like, okay, this is my opportunity. I am the COVID generation. How can I differentiate myself from the pack? Because I think that's going to be a question that employers ask going forward. What did you do during 2020? And then there's a lot of people that are also just saying, you know what, I'm going to take this chance to learn a few more skills, meet some more people. And I think all three of those are really valid. You know, what's that meme that says, like, you don't need to be super productive during a global pandemic? Like, just take some moments to think about what is your, you know, what do you feel like you can do? But from an employability perspective, you know, and we're talking future of work, right? I really, really think this is the moment where creativity and social entrepreneurship is going to take its place, because a lot of young people that we work with are saying, this is my time to, like, give something a go, because when else am I going to do it? You know, we might as well build something new, start that website, do the e-commerce store, invent that 3D printing thing, etc. But Kelly, I mean, you've probably got a bajillion amazing, like, stories and stats on this as well for young people.
Yeah, join the party, Kelly. What research? What is your research telling about young talent right now?
Well, I think it's exactly what Jeanette said, that this idea that we grow up and we get told education is your golden ticket to work, that if you do everything right, you will get a job at the other end. And that was not the reality before COVID, let alone right now. And we are stuck in this sort of career education mindset where we're still training people for one job or one career, be a doctor, be a nurse, be a marketing professional. I apologize, I'm not all over the marketing terminology, but we're still telling young people that you're going to have a job for a life, or at least you're going to have one career path for a life. And that's just fundamentally untrue. But what we've done at FYA is think a bit differently about the labour market. So instead of the 1,000 different occupations that you can choose from, how can we instead think about 7 different areas of work that actually require similar skills? And I think this is going to Karl's point before, like, think about the skills that you do have, because they are actually transferable across jobs. And actually our research shows when you work or train in one job, you on average build skills for 13 others. And that's a lot more of an empowering narrative than, you know, robots are taking our jobs, or there's only this one job you can get at the end. There's a range of opportunities available. It's just about adapting and changing to different workplaces.
Yeah, there was a great study, I think, done by Deloitte Workplace Economics. They talked about skills soup, you know, like bringing in a bunch of different skills and mixing them together, and you could take a spoon out of that mixture and like spoon out different roles. And I think that's a really cool way of thinking about it, Kelly, like that empowering narrative. Very cool. You're on mute, my friend.
All right, I was just testing you guys to see if you really pay attention to me. So clearly you are. Thank you. So first thing, I'm gonna flip this conversation a bit, but I want to encourage the participants of today's webinar to send the questions to Q&A. We're gonna have 15 minutes at the end of this webinar to be asking questions to Kelly, to Jeanette, and Karl. So please send the questions. I'm really looking forward to answer your questions. All right. So I want to talk to you about another 3 things before we wrap up today. I want to talk about working from home and the new reality. I want to talk about specialists as generalists, but I want to just go back to the education, right? So according to people like Scott Galloway, after this pandemic, future will entail like partnerships between large tech companies like, I don't know, MIT and Google, or Apple and Stanford, or Harvard and Facebook. And he also has the point that it's becoming almost like useless to have those things. They're selling the pedigree, they're selling the degree. It's a luxury item now for certifications. So Jeanette, Kelly, and please Karl, chip in, but I'd like to start with you, Jeanette, with what do you see the roles of universities in established education now?
Yeah, and this is one of those interesting ones, because I've got to be careful, because universities are our biggest client, right? So we work with 18 universities here in Australia, like 2 in the States, Canada, UK. And look, I love the universities. I was brought up in a very academic household. You know, mum's a MBA, dad's a PhD. Like, I highly respect academia. And I still think that there's a role for academia to play, particularly in research and the commercialization of that research. But I mean, Lucio, you've got those incredible degrees sitting behind you. What we're hearing from a lot of students today is, if I don't need to go to the gorgeous sandstone campus that has the beautiful buildings and the old people's names on the front, and I can get the same kind of education as a Harvard student that's over there through this online portal, then why do I need to be paying so much money and spending so much time? So we're seeing a bit of a shift in power from people to think about, instead of the university controlling a timetable, a student controls their learning schedule. Instead of a university telling you what you should learn, a student or a learner decides what they think is relevant. And we know that even the best universities in Australia can take up to 2 years to get a new course approved. And in the current environment where things are changing like that's just not fast enough. So I really think that that blend that you talked about with regards to tech giants, maybe partnering with existing universities, there's definitely space for that. But I actually just want to put the challenge out to everyone on the call, like, what else can we do, guys? Like, there's got to be some really, really interesting models that we can create with regards to reimagining what university education looks like, with and really kind of, I guess, democratizing access to that incredible learning that's out there and speeding it up. And that's the place that I want to play in. And if anybody wants to play there, come and hang out. That's what I'm interested in.
What do you think, Kelly?
I completely agree about the unresponsive nature of education at times. And I think what we heard from young people is that lack of appropriate education is actually one of their top 4 barriers to getting to work. And that's across a range. That could be university, it could be vocational education, it could be other types of education. But what we found through our research is that the types of skills that are being demanded, particularly in entry-level jobs, are changing. And what we found emerged when we analysed 4.2 million job ads over a 3-year period was that what was previously termed soft skills or 21st century skills, we at FYA call them enterprise skills, were increasingly in demand. In fact, skills like digital literacy, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity were the skills most in demand by employers. So therefore, why aren't we educating young people on these skills? And I think part of the challenge for educational learning environments is that these skills can't necessarily be rote learned. It's about immersive experience. It's about entrepreneurial education. It's about different formats rather than that typical go to a classroom.
Yeah. And we're also seeing like employers, oh, sorry, Karl, you go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that being a brand marketer, that the sandstone buildings and those titles of universities, they're a shortcut for employers. And it's just what interests me. I don't have an answer, but will they be as effective shortcut, heuristics for employers going forward? I mean, that's the reason why we buy a Lacoste, shirt versus a Kmart shirt, because it's the brand that actually then commands the premium. These universities are brands after all, and they've been able to command a premium because it's a shortcut for employers in terms of getting better jobs. No doubt some of the other non-branded universities and courses provide a better or same education, but will they provide the same shortcut for employers? That's the bit that interests me as a brand marketer. I don't have a solution, but I love that.
I think that's so interesting, Karl, because I think that's the opportunity for employers today, is to actually challenge themselves to say, what are the other proxies for quality, success, employability that doesn't necessarily come from, a degree that looks like it did 5 years ago. Kelly, sorry.
I was going to just add to that. I think the way we would frame it is skills are the primary currency in the future of work, not qualifications. And I completely agree. We need a new shortcut to understanding how someone has a skill set and what that looks like in action.
If anyone has ideas, please put them in the chat because I want to talk about it.
I think there are two elements as well. I think it is a very complex subject, and you're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong here, but there's a complexity. Because I see it's out of this coronavirus, the thing that hit me most was the fact that I wasn't on campus anymore, and the interaction with the students. I saw a lot of students struggling with the lack of interaction just because the way they learn in visual and collaboration, all this sort of stuff. And without going through these debates a little bit, because this is not the future of education, it's the future of work. But I think there's a social element. I mean, university is a pretty good time that you get to socialize, you get a heart broken, and you have the parties, and you have all this socialization that it builds up in a character. And makes you.
I want to go to your school, Lucio.
Sorry?
I want to go to your school.
Oh, well, that's supposed to be historically how things work. But I also think there's a thing that's a very interesting, and I see, and I've been observing this for a long time. These things behind which universities and institutions give to you, it's credibility via endorsement, right? And nowadays, the reality is there are other ways of building up the credibility endorsement. A million followers on Instagram, it means something. It's a sort of endorsement and a sort of credibility. So I think that the credibility endorsement has been replaced by different ways. Younger talent jump into startups and having projects and building up of experience and demonstrated experience. I think that's a very interesting topic. And I'd love to have more time, but I wanted to go back. I want to flip a little bit here. And we cannot avoid to be having this conversation about future of work if we don't talk about the place where we work, right? Karl, coronavirus can really spark a revolution of work from home, right? Are we ready? You manage large teams and work with big. So I'd love to hear from you as well, Karl and Jeanette. But I'll start with Karl. Are we even ready for this work from home thing?
Yes, but I'd probably say that I'm not sure if it's a revolution. I think what I'm really interested in terms of the scenario that we've been in is taking the best of both worlds, the pre-COVID and the post-COVID. For me, it's an interesting reflection. I was reading something by a guy, a behavioral economist called Rory Sutherland, that working from home hasn't been stopped by technology. I mean, we've had laptops for, I don't know how long, and we've had high-speed internet for how long. What stopped us from working from home is cultural barriers. That idea of you're working from home, I'm like, yeah, sure you are. And I've heard experiences of teams that have sort of had half and half just as COVID was hitting, and that didn't work at all. What has worked is if everyone's in the office or if everyone's online. So you think about some of the, I'm going to give a bit of a pros and cons. Some of the pros of working from home is the tyranny of distance is gone. I was just having a meeting with someone from London before we got on here, and there's no problem. We get to go home. I get to walk downstairs in half an hour and have dinner, and I don't have to step into traffic, more family time. And one of the interesting ones is around extroverts and introverts. If you go to a big, large meeting, the extroverts dominate, whereas in online, you sort of pass the torch around. So introverts have had more of a voice. So they're the pros. In terms of the cons, I'm a big believer in those impromptu conversations, those little sparks that happen within a business or an organization. Google talk about they have great work when people have lunch together, because it's those impromptu conversations that lead to great outcomes. We're missing that. How do you build culture when we're purely online? I've joined an organization. I've been into the office for 4 hours. So all my interactions are online. So therefore, in terms of forming trusting relationships with people has been quite problematic, and trust is a big part of how we then, we are social beings, how we come together. So I do think there's pros and cons both ways. I'm not sure if it's a revolution, but I want to take the best of what we've had, find the silver lining. And I think we might get into this hybrid where there might be days at home, like, every Friday is a day at home, or every Wednesday, or whatever it may be. So therefore, we can take the best of the online meeting world or the online world, but then also get those social interactions going in an office environment. I'm not there ready to can or dismiss the office straight away. So I think there's still some benefits for the office to happen.
Karl, I totally agree. And it's funny, I've worked at both super large corporates, the ones that have the 4 or 5 million customers. And also now I work for my own startup with a team of 7. And I think like being able to, you mentioned that sort of those sparks and the chit chat that happen around lunch tables and everything. One of our biggest challenges as a small team has been to kind of find ways to recreate that. But we've always been remote, right? So we've kind of recreated the water cooler on our WhatsApp channels. And I've seen this done really well on like Discord or in Slack. There's almost a really deliberate curation of that spark. And I think that's going to be a really interesting challenge for like those big, the big larger companies. But yeah, I see, Melissa's got a point on the chat. Everyone is more accountable now. And I think that is part of the one of the positives that I'd love to bring in is that trust and treating everybody like an adult, and really understanding that, they will make the best choice with how they spend their time. And maybe that afternoon, the best spend of their time is taking their kid to the beach. And that's okay, because that they might be online with a London office, like at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I think it's this, as you mentioned, that removal of the tyranny of distance and the reach that we have now. I think there's stuff that we're doing that we could have always done and we just didn't think about it. So instead of having like a work from home day, Karl, we've actually got the other way where everyone is remote, but then every like Friday, we actually come into the office, despite the people that work in different countries and cities, but like the people that can, we deliberately congregate on one day. So it is interesting, and it's interesting to see what that impact is going to be like on commercial real estate, tenancies, offices, etc.
Kelly, do you have anything in the research-based data that's about to come out of the from you guys in terms of working from home and impacts and trends? There's anything you can share with us?
Well, we've done some research into flexible work, not so much in terms of flexibility in terms of working from home, but more about flexible contracting arrangements. So anything other than full-time work. So if we're thinking about part-time work, casual, gig work, contractors, and what that means for young people. In terms of working from home, personally speaking, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. Some days it works perfectly for me, and other days I'm tearing my hair out just wanting some social interaction. So I think that issue that Karl mentioned of connection, or those water cooler moments, is so pertinent. And a lot of the research there for young people at the moment is their mental health's been hugely impacted by this crisis. And I wonder what the ongoing and enduring impacts are if we continue working from home, and how we find ways to engage. I don't know about everyone else, but a lot of Zoom meetings all day makes me very tired, even if it is sociable.
Well, I think that what's happening to us right now is like we're not really necessarily working from home. We've been forced to work, stuck at home. I mean, it's a little bit of a mix of what we're doing. It's a very different. We all been condensed and pressured, and I think we're going to need a bit of time off this just to rebalance and understand exactly what it is, and try a little bit here, a little bit there. I mean, some of you guys might remind the times, I think it was like probably 2000s or end of the 90s, where the open offices was to change the world, and now we see few setbacks on there, right? So, and it worries.
You can't do that with Zoom meetings.
A bit of fun.
You can't do open plan offices with a Zoom.
No. I think it goes back to how we communicate as humans, and I'm going to get the statistics wrong, but you know, the stat that sort of lands in my head is of how we communicate. 10% is through our words, 30% is through our body language, and 60% is in our tone. So we're actually missing out on a big component. I've done webinars or public speaking online, and you don't get that interaction from body language and from facial expressions and things like that. And it's a big way of how humans communicate. So we can't dismiss that.
Yeah, and I'm seeing what I've been talking. This is very conversationally. It's not really empirical evidence around there. It's just observation. What I'm seeing is companies I've been talking to, they're kind of trialing the mixed model. Maybe what Jeanette said. That's okay, great. We're going to be the default, going to be work from home, and we're going to meet in the office. So I don't know. It's very interesting to see what's becoming. So Kelly, you mentioned when you're doing the rehearsal, you're talking about some of the research, and you're mentioning that's a new research coming, and we're going to share the links and everything else. But a question I get asked a lot by my students, and I have close to 1,000 of them every year, is moving now from the 20 years old, 25 years old, do I go after being a specialist, or do I become a generalist? So actually it's a question to all of you, but I'll start with Kelly.
So I actually see there's a question in the Q&A, which is about T-shaped skill sets. And in fact, I think now most people refer to it more as a comb, that across your lifetime, you will need those really portable, transferable skills like communication, teamwork, time management, but you also will need to develop some level of expertise, or those technical skills, but they will change over time because, as we know, particularly in things like data or marketing, like the programs and the skills that you use actually can change quite rapidly as technology shifts. So you will have to gather more of those deep expertise over time, but what you will bring with you that whole time through is those transferable enterprise skills as well. So my response is a bit of a cop-out. It is a bit of both. I think you need to be both a specialist and a generalist.
Karl,
it's something that I'm really passionate about, because you know, I think we've got a predominantly marketing and advertising audience, and I'm an admitted marketing geek, and I do think that it really isn't a question of or, it's a question of and. I'd reframe the question. I think the generalist skills are really required, and some of the generalist skills I talk about if you're doing a marketing degree, or if I'm giving advice to my previous self, is really about understanding, you know, the benefits of marketing is around understanding strategy, really how to position, or maybe not position, but how to actually strategize in terms of what problem we're trying to solve. I think commercial acumen is a skill which is a generalist skill, which is really, really vital to the role of marketing and somewhat overlooked. And I think the idea of customer and the idea that you are not the customer and being customer orientated. Add to that, which is more of a life skill around, I'll call it EQ, but in terms of a mindset, a resilience, that emotional intelligence in terms of how to win friends and influence people, they're all needed. But then I flip on that because I look at, if I was a marketing graduate coming into a role, all the roles at the moment are more specialist roles. They are marketing automation roles. They are programmatic roles. They are content creation roles. They're digital media roles. So that's where the demand is. So if I want to position myself to get into an organization, I'm going to have to understand what those specialist requirements are so I can get those entry-level roles. And then, yes, do the comb thing that Kelly talked about. But my attitude is you're going to need to be specialist to get the job, but you're going to need to be a generalist to be successful at the job. And if I had to prioritize, I will say generalist over specialist because, and my evidence to back that up, if you look in the last 10, 20 years, some of the best marketers and the most successful marketers and the marketers in the roles that we all aspire to have, I'm not going to say majority, but predominantly come from these great marketing training grounds of Procter & Gamble and Unilever, where they really give you commercial responsibility and you really need to own a brand and you manage a brand. Now, I'm not saying Procter & Gamble and Unilever and those FMCG brands will be the future, but maybe it is the Facebooks or the Googles that will be those great marketing training grounds. But it's those areas where you've actually had to demonstrate strategy, customer, and commercial acumen and demonstrate a level of EQ to sort of succeed in the organization. But yeah, so I'm going to say it's not all, it's and.
Jeanette?
Could I add a super quick story to that? And I like the cop out from both my co-panelists. No, I'm just kidding. But from a personal perspective, you know, I was working, you know, as a marketer and a product manager in corporate before I went into the startup space. And I guess what I would count as my two key things there would be a transitional skill and a mindset, you know, a learning mindset. So the transitional skill as a marketer, I looked around at the tech space and I was like, okay, what's my bridge into this new industry that I'm really keen on? And Annabelle from GA, this is not a deliberate plug, but I actually did do a UX course at General Assembly because I thought to myself, as a marketer, user experience design is something that is quite translatable. You know, I kind of get what personas are. I know what like a journey is. I know how to think about the customer. So it was like a bridge skill that took me into the tech and innovation space more broadly. But I mean, there's been a Harvard, you know, study that came out recently that said it's not about a particular skill. It's going to be about a learning mindset. And I think, you know, taking that learning mindset throughout your career, as Karl said, is going to help you be successful. But yeah, I would just get people to think about what the bridging skills are. They might just be really little, because with that little drop of credibility, then you can open up a whole new industry.
Yeah, there's a saying, you know, go where the ball's going to go in terms of sport, and that's you know, in terms of understanding where the entry level jobs or where the job creation is.
That's
but
right. Yep.
I would avoid getting stuck in there because I think you can find yourself very staid and irrelevant quite quickly. So yeah.
I'm supposed to be listening to your opinion rather than giving mine, but I think there is one thing that I always advise my students, and I think it's very valid here. There are few of the skills that there is no way you can escape of being a journalist. So, for example, I think that for us marketers, understanding, having some degree of literacy in cybersecurity, it's a mandate. You don't need to be expert. You're actually not even a journalist. You just need to have some literacy to be able to talk about it. We are becoming marketing. I read another white paper some time ago. We have become the #1 entry door for hacking attacks because we buy so many SaaS systems and social media and search and this and that. We need these massive open doors for hacking. So you need to have some degree of literacy. So some of these future skills, which you're gonna jump right now to the Q&As. Start with you, Kelly. Hot seat. I have a question here. What job industries, and we got to be a bit succinct because we have 10 minutes and loads of questions, which is amazing. What job industries do you see growing over the next 5 or 10 years? And the best industries for young professionals to look at? Big question, but hopefully we can have a little bit of succinct answer here. Jeanette, feel free to jump after Kelly.
Absolutely. I think big caveat here, some of the research that we did into this was in a pre-COVID world. But what we did look at was the areas of growth. And instead of looking at by industry, we, as I sort of said earlier, think about the labour market a bit differently, and we refer to them as job clusters. And the top 3 growing job clusters in Australia were the technologists, so working in digital technology, whether that be a database administrator or a web developer. There was the carers cluster, so working in mental, physical, or social kind of care. That could be anything from a GP, a nurse, all the way through to a fitness instructor. And then the third area was the informers, which was about providing information or business services to others. That might be a lawyer, a teacher. And what I'd like to highlight here is it doesn't mean that every job within that area of work is growing. It's just on average, that area of work is growing. So that means your opportunities in terms of the portability of your skills across jobs is actually substantially larger. And there are entry-level jobs within all of those areas of work. So I encourage you to think about, how can I develop skills in and enter that area of work via those entry-level jobs, but also know that I can maintain a career in that area of work.
Jeanette, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just need to look at like what the federal government has said about the funding of university courses to see that, you know, those clusters that Kelly has mentioned is really echoed in what policy changes are coming through as well. So, you know, focusing reduced fees on areas like technology, STEM, caring, nursing, teaching. I mean, my personal view is like whether or not changing the cost of a university fee is going to change a workplace and an industry. I don't know if that's the case. I think we might be better off looking at the career pathways and development pathways of those industries, and maybe even the minimum pay rates of those industries. But yeah, I think you know, our government's giving us a pretty clear signal as to where they think that the demand is headed, and whether people want to pay attention to that is completely up to them. But I personally think that a cross-disciplinary approach to your learning and to your career is going to set you up for much more success in the future.
Awesome. Karl, put in a hot seat as well. I have a question, burning question, burning. Can you share a little more when you decide to resign from the CMO role? And if you have doubts about yourself, and it's not enough, if you question if you see a marketing role is the career path of something else transpired.
That's a deep question. I thank you for the question. The answer is yes, I did question myself, but not about being a senior marketer. What I did question myself about was not around my IQ, but around my EQ, around you know, the level of understanding and about how important culture is, and about the type of person I am, and the type of person and the type of environment in which I can thrive and be authentically me, and be the best that I can be of me, and understanding that sometimes, you know, not every organization is the right fit for every individual. Going back to the marketing aspect, it made me more determined, more resolute to know that I am and will be a career marketer. It's something that I love. It's something that's in me. I do it for fun, not just for work. And part of that, actually, I went and did an MBA course in brand management. Some of you would know, or have heard of Mark Ritson. We got drunk and he talked me into doing it. Because I know him through my involvement in the Comms Council and the FEs, and I did it, and I did quite well, but it actually gave me focus. And not only it gave me focus, I told him at the end of it, it made me fall in love with this thing called marketing again. And it just grew my love for it and made me even more determined and set me on the path of the consulting that I'm doing now as well. So I think it's right to question yourself, but don't question. Just understand that there's multiple things you can question yourself if you find yourself in this situation. Really understand what you love and what you don't love, and what type of environments you can thrive in and not thrive in. It might be big businesses, small businesses. It might be a different, you know, retail versus FMCG versus finance. It might be, you know, corporate cultures versus more free-spirited cultures. Just understand what your value is and where you're best to thrive and where you can be authentically you.
Thanks, Karl. That's a great answer. I'm going to jump into another question. For someone changing careers, how to promote and showcase the skills over experience? Who wants to take that?
I'm going to jump in here because this is something that I like to talk about. But I've got a life hack for you. If you're looking to change careers into a particular kind of industry, apart from doing the bridging course or that kind of stuff, is if you can find where the people are hanging out. So where are the meetups? Where are the Facebook groups? See if you can find those professions in a group somewhere, because they're already clustered somewhere, I guarantee it. And if there's a way that you can volunteer your time to help organize these things and bring it together, you end up becoming by default someone who's seen as an expert in that particular industry. So this is basically how I hacked my way into the startup space. Was I ended up like running events, volunteering for female entrepreneurship things, and all of a sudden you're the person at the front of the room, metaphorically, with the microphone, and you're seen as a leader. So I would definitely look at getting, like, don't underestimate the value of events and volunteering for industry things. Absolutely do not neglect your LinkedIn profile. This is probably my biggest social media platform, like after, yeah, actually I think it is my biggest social media platform, which may or may not be sad, and you may or may not judge me, but that's okay. But that is where a lot of connections and genuine personal branding happens. And make sure you own your personal domain name as well. I think, like, if you can get JeanetteCheah.com and own that and just have it be a really nice, friendly landing page, I would recommend that. And if you can find a startup that you want to do a project for, great way to showcase your work. That was a lot of things. Sorry. Karl, Kelly?
Thank you. I actually want to jump to Kelly and ask her something. That I have 3 questions on the Q&A today, but I also get asked a lot by students, all right? Usually students come into the last year of university, they feel a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure to either go and get an internship or to enroll themselves directly to another course, okay? And I have a question here that I'm currently finished my school, uni. A lot of students are in a rush to grab internships at the moment. Should I feel pressure? How important are internships to employers? And someone else asking, in terms of gaining qualifications, would you recommend studying for masters or gain experience immediately after graduating from a bachelor's? So Kelly, what's your tip here?
So from our research, we know that not enough work experience is one of the top 4 barriers for young people getting into full-time work. And what we often hear when we speak to employers is you have to have a job to get a job. So I think while educating yourself and building up your skill set's really important, it's also really important to have that in a practical environment where you can showcase, as we've sort of said, your skills and your experience. So if there's a way, whether it be through your university degree or other kind of qualification, that you can have sort of dual, like a work placement at the same time, that's really powerful. And what we know is that it can actually be an accelerator to get to work. So from our research, we identified that 5,000 hours of relevant paid employment actually gets a young person to work 17 months faster than a young person who doesn't have that work experience. So while I think building up skills over time is really important, I would say work experience is equally, if not more so, important.
Yeah, and if you're at uni still and there's work integrated learning internships available, great way to do it. Our program is actually like connected to a work integrated learning thing. So we're now developing a program where you can work experience on your own startup with mentoring and support and get credit towards your degree. So there's a bunch of new exciting things that are out there for students that can look into that isn't the traditional, like, I'm going to get coffee for someone for 10 weeks.
I just wanted to jump in on the last one. Again, I'm greedy. Whenever I see an or, I'll make it an ad. And I did my master's in marketing while I was doing toy catalogs at Maya, you know, so that was my entry level role. And just the creative spark that happens in terms, or not the creative spark, but the learning sparks that happen of learning things and then applying it in your role, or seeing the prism of your business through new lenses by which you're learning, is actually, it's incremental in terms of the benefits of the learning you'll have. I was doing some consulting while I was doing the MBA course. And again, I was able to actively apply some of my learnings straight away. And therefore it made me really understand the benefits of those learnings. If I could just add the last thing in terms of, on the Q&A, there's a question there about the skills of marketing in the future. I want to say I'm really passionate about this. The skills of marketing in the future will be the same as the skills of the marketing in the past. What will be different though are the way that you tactically execute it. So shout out to my friend Lucio and Sergio, who have just announced a TikTok centered agency. Yeah, at the end of the day, they're going to be helping marketers execute in a new platform that they didn't exist a year ago. There's going to be new platforms and new ways to communicate or execute tactics in years ahead, and in 5 years ahead, and in 10 years ahead, and in 100 years ahead. But what's not going to potentially change is the theory of marketing. It may evolve and become more effective, but understanding strategy, understanding customers, and understanding ultimately why marketing is here, which is to change behavior and therefore get better societal outcomes, or actually to drive more profitable outcomes. Ultimately, that's what marketing is all about, and that's not going to change. How you execute the tactics, that will change.
That's phenomenal. That's a great wrap up. Guys, I have so many questions. This has been so interactive. There's so many questions I would like to be taking to you. There's so much more of this topic we can be talking, but we're right on time. People are gonna be excited for their dinners, their wines, their kids. I'm gonna wrap up. If you can be gently in about 15 seconds, each one of you. I just think that's really nice that you gave yourselves, gave your time to this audience today with your wisdom, your experience, and you helped, I guarantee, helped a lot of people here with their doubts today. I'd like to ask you to ask anything from our audience. So if you can go around the room here, and if you can ask anything to the audience, if they want them to follow you on LinkedIn, if you want them to put you for a gig in a consultancy, download a white paper. Yes, so please feel free to ask anything and to say your last words. Karl?
Sure. Last words. I just actually want to leave you with a topic. There's a saying that Mike Tyson actually said, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. Well, it's fair to say that we've all been punched in the face in some metaphorical way. But that's the past. I'll leave you with a second saying, which has sort of got me through this period, and it is a Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time was today. So my request of the audience is think about what trees you can start planting today, and therefore that then can bloom in 5, 10, 20 years time. And as Lucio said, if you're looking for a marketing consultant, I'm here. I can help SMEs, agencies, or big corporates. But yeah, I'll leave you with that.
Nicely done, Karl. You can tell he's a marketer at heart, and he obviously knows how to filter the audience. I'm going to go with a quote as well from the legendary Warren Buffett, who said, when the tide goes out, you'll find out who's been swimming naked. And I think the tide is well and truly out, and there's a lot of people clutching their bits right now. So instead of being that person, let's get ahead of it. If there are any students that want to connect with us, we'd love to bring some students on the Hacker Exchange. We're running some great entrepreneurship programs. Otherwise, yeah, please just follow me on LinkedIn. It's Jeanette Cheah everywhere, or Hacker Exchange everywhere. And I just want to also just acknowledge everyone for taking time out of their day to invest in their own knowledge. And I think that says a lot about you guys and who you are. So you're well on the way to planting that tree. I feel like I'm mixing metaphors now.
Well, insert inspirational quote here. All I think I want to say to everyone is get excited about learning, because instead of having a career for a lifetime, you're going to have a lifetime of careers, and that's really cool. You never have to do the same thing if you don't want to. And I just think that's an amazing new future of work to look forward to.
Thank you very much, and I strongly advise each one of you guys to go to Future Young Foundation of Young Australians. I'm sorry, Kelly. And register yourselves. When is the report coming, Kelly? The new one?
Early next month.
Early next month. And it is absolutely amazing, amazing work you guys do. I'm very glad. Anyway, we are very fortunate to be able to have you, Karl, to have you, Jeanette, to have you, Kelly. You are amazing human beings, so wise, and I'm very thankful for all your advice. And I guarantee I'm watching this and I'm thinking already to show these to my students at RMIT, at Deakin. This is so rich. I have learned a lot. I guarantee the audience has learned a lot. So this resumes. So thank you, Jeanette, Karl, and Kelly. You're amazing. Thank you very much. Yay!
Thank you so much to Lucio,
Thank you,
Karl,
Thank you. Bye.
for everything tonight. Just a reminder to our audience, if you have any time to share feedback, that would be amazing. The link's just up on the screen now. Thanks everyone and have a great night.